Hello, I'm Keith Brunson, and welcome to The Voice Choice. Here at The Voice Choice, we meet the people that you hear that you never see in documentaries, movie trailers, commercials, all of those voices that you've heard that you never see. So who are those people? Today, we will meet unequivocally one of the superstars of the Los Angeles Hollywood community, Bill Ratner. And we welcome Bill to the show right now. How are you, Bill?
Hey, Keith.
I would like to know straight off the bat, why do you think, amid all of the different voices that you do, that you become the voice of choice?
Actually, I just got my real estate license and I'm trying massage school. No, I'm kidding. That's always my default, because I started out in the advertising business at age 14 as an errand boy. My default comment to a producer, a director, a friend, how's it going on voiceovers, is, well, I can always go back to being an errand boy. The truth is, I fell in love with voiceovers when I was 5 years old. My dad, I am very lucky to say, was an advertising guy. At the time, he was in publishing, but he made me very aware of TV and radio and the announcers and the musicians and the copywriters and so on. And so the first time I remember watching television, I was 5 years old, and the announcer said, literally, "The following commercial message will be 60 seconds long," which is what they did in the early days of television, announcing the commercials. And I thought, who is that guy? He's invisible. What a voice. He seems to know everything. And so I watched, it was like Dodge Motor Company for 1952, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as the commercial was over, I ran into the kitchen and I said, "Mom, I know what a minute is." "Oh, what's that, dear?" 60 seconds. "Oh, did you learn that in kindergarten?" "No, the man on TV told me." And so at about age 12, my dear friend John Waterhouse and my neighbor friend Steve Gray and John Barstow and Bill Connors, we all formed the Brotherhood of Radio Stations. We each took old AM radios that our parents had either left up in the attic or weren't using, and tore them apart and soldered a microphone to the volume control and turned them into PA systems. So instead of listening to WDGY at 10:30, we were listening to ourselves all day long. "Hi, my name is Bill. I love the sound of my voice." And then we thought, well, how could we put this to use? So each one of us wired our houses for sound. We put intercom speakers in secret places where we could bug our parents' conversations. And when they were listening, we could broadcast the music and news shows we would write and so on. And so that was adolescence. I didn't really get into radio and television broadcasting until I was 30 years old. I took a decade off to do small theater in Minneapolis and San Francisco and Berkeley. And then I went to film school at City College of San Francisco. And I had this wonderful old television writer named Larry Menken, who wrote Bonanza and The Virginian and Harlem Detective and lots of early television cop shows. And he pointed to me in class. He said, you're going to narrate the class film. And I went, "Oh, okay." And that was the beginning of my voiceover career.
Our business is so weird that, our mothers don't understand what we do. Our spouses kind of don't. "What'd you do today, honey?" "I played the part of an artichoke." "Oh, that's nice, dear."
I worked at a radio station out in the suburbs of San Francisco, KKISS 99. And one of the sales guys, making all the money with the Mercedes in the parking lot, Ralph Pizzella, said, "You should do voiceovers." And I said, "What are voiceovers?" And he said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No." When I was 30 years old, and I'd been in the radio business for a couple of years, and he said, that CVS pharmacy commercial you just did, where you did 55 tags, it took you an hour and a half, and you made your, 165 bucks a week. I said, yeah. He said, well, the guy who recorded the 30-second spot, whose voice you heard, he made 289 bucks for a half hour's work. And I went, gee, the math is not too difficult. So he gave me the name of a guy in LA. I was moving to LA from San Francisco, Berkeley, named Johnny Rabbit. His mother knew him as Don DiPietro, who had worked for Dick Clark for radio stations that Dick Clark owned. And I took a voiceover workshop, which was really fun because it wasn't as nervous making as an acting class where, your body, your face, your butt's on the line. In voiceovers, it's a little more collegial in class, and it's just your voice. It's just you and the mic in the booth. And for the next 6 years, literally, probably about 40 weeks of the year, I took voiceover workshops every single week. Privates, mainly classes because they were cheaper. These days, you can do it online.
That is a very long time to study.
I could have earned a medical degree and been a brain surgeon, but I make more money this way, Keith. No, I have more fun and there's less stress, and I don't have to explain why I ruined somebody's skull, unless they feel their skull was ruined by a commercial that airs in the Super Bowl.
How did you get the role of Flint in G.I. Joe? That is such a deep dive into the big time. How did you achieve that success? Tell us the story.
Hasbro had great success with the character, the 11.5-inch tall G.I. Joe was his name, for many, many years. And then when Star Wars came along and George Lucas went to China and had all of his action figures made 3.5 inches tall, not a foot tall, but 3.5 inches tall, with little arms that moved and so on, and was making hundreds of millions of dollars. Kids and parents stopped buying Hasbro action figures and started buying Star Wars action figures. They were cheaper. You could buy more of them.
Yeah.
And their stock really went into the toilet. And this is the late 70s. And Star Wars, I think, came out at about 1978, 77. So Hasbro in Rhode Island said, what do we do? What do we do? What do you do? Well, let's do what George Lucas is doing. But we can't shrink G.I. Joe down. Why not? Let's make him the Joe Team. And they went to Stan Lee at Marvel Comics and said, would you be able to create a G.I. Joe comic book, a limited series, with Destro, Cobra Commander, Flint, Lady Jaye, Duke, Scarlet? That sextet of characters. The comic book was advertised on television and served essentially as an advertisement for what became what they planned to be a miniseries of with those 6 characters from the Joe Team, the brand new Joe Team. And they had a huge audition. Sunbow Pictures was the distribution arm and the production arm. And of course, Hasbro said, let's make a miniseries. Let's see if we can sell these action figures, Flint, Duke, Lady Jaye, etc. And none of the networks wanted the show. So the salespeople from Sunbow and Hasbro had to go station to station across the country, wearing out shoe leather and running up their gasoline credit cards to sell the idea of a G.I. Joe miniseries, 6 episodes, I believe. And so they held an audition. They called every talent agent in Hollywood. And I think over 100 of us showed up. And one day, beautiful sunny day, in Studio City outside the Wally Burr recording studios, lined up on the sidewalk. I mean, these studios are not gigantic places. They're basically like a 1-bedroom apartment with a great big mixing board and, and so on. And there were executives from Hasbro and executives from Sunbow and writers and animators all crowded into the studio, and one voiceover person at a time. But there were character actors from TV, I remembered, from the 50s and 60s, and voice actors, of course, who I knew, and we had the same agent, and people from all over Southern California who were professional actors or voice actors auditioning for these characters. And we're standing in the sun, and the associate producers were passing out black and white Xeroxes of characters they wanted us to play. And they handed me one with a character named Flint, but it was a black and white drawing, ink drawing, Xerox.
I remember very clearly.
With 30 seconds worth of text from Flint. And, I had this T-shirt and big pectoral muscles and black, beret and everything. All right, Lady J, you better get your dartons on. Because Cobra's on their way, and I can't bring up the laser threat weapon system. We got to get out of here. Yo, Joe. And I looked nothing like Flint. I was sort of a dumpy middle-aged man with a scraggly beard. And I got in the studio, and Wally Bird, directed each one of us. We weren't able to watch each other's auditions. It was one at a time. You go into the soundproof booth, and they shut the door. All right, louder, faster. You're angry now. You don't sound wimpy. You've got a dinosaur trying to bite your neck. A space monster. Come on, fight. Just make noises like you're being killed. No. All right, next. And I thought, well, that was fun. And maybe 10 days later, I get a call from my agent saying, well, you got the G.I. Joe thing. And I said, what, I remember auditioning, but what is it? Well, they're going to do a limited series, six episodes. And you get Scale, Screen Actors Guild. We're all members of the Screen Actors Guild, our union.
Right.
And Scale, I think at the time was, I don't know, $670 for an hour and a half's work. Cool. And then residuals after that. So I went to the session and met my fellow actors, and 6 microphones were lined up, and that's how I got the gig.
So how do we get out of here? Any bright ideas?
Push the button on my watch.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles on the land or the sea. Shut everything behind us.
You're gonna clam up, or do we have to?
Yo, Joe!
Can you figure out how it works?
I think so. Destro always uses the same basic design layouts.
I'll remember that in the future.
Turned out pretty well, Bill. Turned out
well. I mean, it's
well.
The story of G.I. Joe, the TV cartoon, is
mm-hmm.
still going on. You can go on Hulu today, 40 years, 4 decades after we began production of the cartoon. We did 52 episodes in L.A. And you can download episodes from Hulu of G.I. Joe. That's right. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
I heard that voice. And just for purposes of demonstration for people watching, give me 2 or 3 lines ad-libbed of that character right now.
Lady J, last time we were up on the roof and you asked, where's the sunscreen? I thought you were in love with me. All you really wanted to do is protect your own skin. But I love you anyway, kiddo.
Well, this is the kind of email I like to get. And I wanted to see if you were interested in another voiceover job for one of our premier Halloween projects. Dear Aaron, don't want to answer too soon. You'll think I'm too eager. So I'll wait. 2, 3. Okay, I'll answer now.
Let's switch gears for a moment here. You're probably, I've looked into it, out of the people who are doing movie trailers in the Hollywood community, you're one of the choice voices for sure. How did you get in the very complicated game of MGM and Paramount and DreamWorks and all of the movie people? How did they come to realize they wanted you doing their trailer?
Well, years ago, I think really into the 80s, they generally hired, Paramount would produce a picture, and then the last thing, of course, they would do is the trailer for the marketing department. to get it get it into the movie theaters and get it on TV and so on. And they would hire, well, we need an announcer. So they would call CBS or call NBC. You guys have a staff announcer, right? Get him over here. We'll pay him an extra couple $100. And so when you go on YouTube and Google trailers, 1960s, 1950s, and then War of the Worlds, the biggest movie Universal Studios has ever made. And that's what they sounded like. Really from the time talkies came in. But then the movie trailer became more of an art.
When the world needs a hero,
You need to be that guy.
Well, this is a strange turn of events.
he will answer the call.
And the superhero movie will never be the same.
The marketing departments of these gigantic studios, especially when they began making big tentpole pictures, the Marvel pictures, the DC Comics pictures, the superhero movies, the movies with sequels and so on. There was such profit to be made in movies, greater and greater. There's always been profits to be made, but they got really in the 80s just huge. $100 million movie would make 400 or 500
Big
million.
films.
Yeah.
Big films.
And
big budgets.
with
Sure.
budgets like that, they could afford to advertise on television. TV advertising is not cheap. And when they started making television commercials, TV trailers for movies, they wanted specialty voices. And a great man, the late great Don LaFontaine, you should really Google Don LaFontaine, was
I
an
remember him
editor.
well, actually.
He
I
was
sure
not a
do.
voiceover guy. He was not an actor. He went into the Army at 17 and was a recordist for the Army band. Then he got hired a couple of years later by his boss from the Army, who was working for Paramount Radio, doing radio commercials for Paramount Pictures. And he began to edit and hire voiceover guys, and did that. He was in his 40s. He was one of the top end writers of movie trailers and editors of movie trailers. And the story goes that one day in the early 80s, his voice was on what they call a scratch track, or the practice track, voice track of a movie trailer for a kung fu picture out of China, out of Taiwan. And the producers were there, and apparently the voiceover guy was late. And they played the track with Don LaFontaine's voice. And he didn't have a typical announcer's voice, but he had a beautiful, deep, mellifluous voice and spoke very naturally. And Ling Chao was a killer. His mother was a lover. And together they took over the world. And the guy goes, "Where's the voiceover guy?" And well, he's late. But this guy sounds fine. Who's he? Well, he's the editor. That's Don LaFontaine. Well, let's use him. And so slowly but surely, Don LaFontaine started getting used on these low-budget, imported kung fu pictures. And very quickly, the marketing world in the movie world is like a small town. It's just a few thousand people. Picture a small town somewhere behind the mountains in Nevada with 2,300 residents, but they all write and produce trailers for motion pictures. And that's what you have in Hollywood, and a few in New York that do mainly foreign movies for the distributors that are in New York. 99% of it is done here in LA. And very quickly, word spread about this voice guy named Don LaFontaine. But he thought, they're pulling me away from my editing bay. I got to figure out what am I doing with my life? This is crazy. I'm newly married. I'm having kids, and he met an agent named Steve Tischerman Agency, who represented a lot of guys with deep voices, and Tischerman pursued Don for 2 years, so says Steve Tischerman. Begged him, "Don, I could make you so much money. You don't have to edit anymore. You don't have to stay in the editing bay at 2 a.m. You can go home and have dinner with your wife and kids. You can get a limo to drive you to your voiceover gigs." And so finally, Don LaFontaine, who was being hired by so many of the studios and so many of the small boutique ad agencies that do nothing but movie trailers and TV promos for the networks, and became what began to be known as the voiceover's $6 million man. Were he alive today, he'd be making more like 15 or 20. And we all
everybody knows the story of Don LaFontaine and his success. Would you say that he got things going in the movie trailer television business? Would you give him that credit?
Well, what he did was very interesting, because actors can be paranoid, performers can be jealous of other performers. He was the opposite. He went to Tischerman and he said, "Look, Steve, I'm getting so many gigs. I'm working from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. I want to get home with my wife and kids. Will you pick a half a dozen guys, younger guys who want to do this, and just tell them they can ride along with me in my limo, and I'll introduce them to some of the producers and see if they can take some of this work off my back." That's literally what happened. The worst mistake I ever made in my career was when Don said, "Hey, Bill, listen, why don't you got a nice voice, you're doing voiceovers, but you ought to get in the trailer business. You should do it from your heart, man. Why don't you ride along with me in the limo," literally, "and you can watch me work." And I thought, well, that's interesting. And my ego did not allow me to do it. I liked him. I trusted him as a friend, but I didn't want to be the guy who was tagging along. The 6 guys who tagged along with Don for a few months and went to the studios and the trailer houses all became great successes in the trailer business. It took me longer.
I don't think that anybody really understands just how meticulous the work is. So let's show them an example of you doing a piece of audio for Lady Gaga. And Mike, roll that right now for everybody to see, and we'll come back afterwards.
Tonight, we talk to folks in the area about the crimes. Going Gaga for Gaga. Going Gaga for Lady Gaga. Going Gaga for Lady Gaga.
So the first thing that everybody gets to see is that you go up and you go down and you're in the middle, and there's really a great deal of detail that goes into getting it just right. Would you elaborate on that?
I was in a studio on Melrose Avenue in East Hollywood, right across from Paramount Studios, which is, the great, huge piece of real estate that has made billions and billions of dollars for everybody from Desi Arnaz onward. At the great movie studio, which was started in the 1920s, which is still there and producing motion pictures. And it was an older guy who ran the studio, and I was doing some commercial for the Los Angeles Times today and the Los Angeles Times. And I knew that his father had started the studio in the 1930s. And I said, "So tell me about your dad." And he said, "Well, my dad was busy recording the stars." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, look across the street," which was the gate, the entrance to the great Paramount Studios. And in the 1930s, all the big Paramount movie stars, males and females, would take their lunch hour, run across the street to this little recording studio, and record their parts in the big radio network dramas. Radio drama, of course, preceded television dramas. All the cop shows, all the comedies, everything you see on cable and NBC, TBS, blah, 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 was preceded in time by radio drama. And radio dramas were huge. You can talk to your great-grandparents. "Oh, yeah, we used to sit around the radio at night and listen to I Love a Miracle," And so I tell that story because needless to say, when you look at pictures from the golden age, movies from the golden age of Hollywood, you see the great, great, great stars, wonderful actors. You don't see schlock, you don't see amateurism. And so the people who did radio drama were the people who preceded voice actors. today.
So it all began with radio drama and then just continued to escalate from radio into television, television into film, and it just kept building, right?
Yeah, and of course it was preceded for centuries and eons by theater, but in the 20th century, radio drama actors and later voice actors had to learn you are not in a theater, you're not on a Broadway stage. It doesn't all sound like this, and so the art of voice acting, which is a lot of intuition and it's a lot of watching and listening what other actors do and listening to voiceover demos and watching the great actors, from Michelle Pfeiffer to Marlon Brando on TV and on your smart TV, and get a Criterion app on your Apple TV and watch the great movies to find out what voice acting is.
In voiceovers, you're doing about three things at once. You're selling, you're telling a story, and you're emphasizing specific copy that the copywriter and the producer has said, this is what we want to sell. It's directed by the marketplace. It's commissioned by the marketplace to achieve a specific result. And that's to get people in their seats and to pay the $10.50 to get in.
It's interesting. I have a very close friend. We were school dads together, and he was a star of a major network sitcom, and said, "Gee, my agent told me I should get into the voiceover thing." And I said, "Well, come on over. I'll hand you some copy. We'll play around." He was a friend, and he's from Ohio, so he has kind of a very flat, neutral American accent, and a lot of actors training. Went to Juilliard. And did a lot of Shakespeare and this and that. But when he speaks on television, he has a very neutral American accent. He doesn't draw attention to himself. He just talks. But when he got in the voiceover booth, all of a sudden it was 1919 and the Titanic was about to crash. And I said, why are you talking like it's 1919? It's not. What do you mean? What do you mean? Everybody who gets in front of a microphone and wants to do voiceovers has what I call their default voice. It's a voice that they automatically end up doing. My default voice is kind of a late 1970s suburban radio voice where everything is kind of vanilla and just the same and kind of boring. And Bobby's used car lot is just as good as Bimby's beauty parlor. And that's clearly not going to win me a lot of auditions. But unfortunately, all actors, all performers, all voice actors have bad habits. And one of the biggest and hardest habits to defeat is your own particular default voice. My friend, the actor from the TV show, his default voice automatically in the voiceover booth was to sound like he was in a comedy at 20th Century Fox in 1932. Why? I don't know. And he couldn't stop. What do you mean?
Isn't the reason that happened historically is because it started in the New York stage? I know what you're talking about. I will attempt to do it. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in all my life. I can't believe you're saying that.
Well,
that type of thing?
It's not conscious. It's an unconscious thing that people do. And so what do you have to do? You have to learn to get out of that. You have to learn to sound real, sound like it's a person talking and not a professional announcer. You have to learn that if you have an accent that just we can't really quite understand you, you have to learn to be able to actually get your lips out of the way of your mouth but still sound natural. I had a producer once say, "Smile." And I said, "Smile?" He said, "Yeah, I'm not saying sound happy. Just get your lips out of your way because we don't understand what you're saying." And so literally I had to make the mechanical adjustment of doing what a smile is in order for the words to be clear. I mean, that was in a commercial where I had 29.5 seconds to say 75 words and to say them clearly and to make people sound like I was a regular person talking about this fabulous soft drink. So it's a trick. And, when people take voiceover workshops, voiceover classes, they're two completely different things you learn. People don't spend enough time on voice production. Go, 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 to save your voice from being injured, like football players in the Super Bowl do. They warm up their bodies, but when they play, when they're on the field, they're vamping. They're calling subconsciously on everything they've ever learned since high school football to get that ball across the line. And it's the same with voice acting. And, the great James Earl Jones, Verizon, and, and Star Wars, etc. It wasn't until he was in his 60s when he started having a huge career in voiceovers. So for 40 some years, this guy was learning to be a master actor before Hollywood's, and the broadcast business said, Mr. Jones, would you please come and do voiceovers for us?
I remember when he broke in and got the CNN voice. I had been following him for many years prior to that, but I did not know that he was in his 60s when he made his voiceover break-in. That's very interesting. You're 74, and every time that you and I talk, you talk about the importance of study. Would you articulate just a little bit about why, at your age, you're still in study?
There was a wonderful, wonderful actor who, before his acting career, was an advertising executive named Hal Douglas. Hal Douglas. You should Google him and go on YouTube. And in his 40s, he left the advertising business because he was getting so much voiceover work, and he did everything from network commercials to movie trailers. And everybody tried to imitate him because he had kind of a natural sort of voice. He wasn't like Don LaFontaine. And then I will never forget my voiceover manager, who specialized in trailers and promos, and he was not an agent, but a manager, said they want a Hal Douglas. They want Hal, but he sounds too old these days. And I thought, sounds too old? Because he was still working. He was still making tons of money out of his home, his home studio, and next to his ranch, his horse barn, literally. I've never forgotten that. And I'm sure that there are producers out there who've said to my agent, and my agent has, bless his heart, not passed it on to me because it would have made me depressed. We love Bill, but he's sounding a little older. The voice gets older. The body gets older. The face gets older. The hands get older. But for me to continue working, the great Don Pardo of Saturday Night Live with Bill Murray, Gilda Radner. He worked as the announcer for Saturday Night Live until he was 92. He's my hero.
I don't think that everybody understands just how meticulous it is. So let's take another look at another clip of you in studio, paying attention, being very focused, what it takes just to get a line or two out. So let's take a look at that now.
Yeah, I'm rolling on one.
That voice inside your head, it's actually in your mouth. Yeah, hi. From the back row, it's your wisdom tooth.
Hey, Bill?
Yeah.
Even though you're being a wise guy, maybe friendlier wise guy.
Oh, yeah, okay. That voice inside your head, it's actually in your mouth. Yeah, hi, it's your wisdom tooth.
Hey, so Bill, we're thinking, you want to try it a different way, like, channel a little Joe Pesci or something that...
Sure. That voice inside your head, it's actually in your mouth. Yeah, hi, it's your wisdom tooth, hence the pearls of wisdom.
What I'm seeing in this video we've just watched shows a lot of attention to detail, to your vowels, to your pronunciation, to everything.
I need to keep my voice and the timbre of my voice and the physical voice box well-oiled and well-worked. And I do it by taking classes where the teacher goes, all right, get your head back, get your chin up, and get into your head voice. Go, 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 go. And if you have a cold, do Yogi Bear. Yogi Bear talks like this and expands his throat just before you start to talk like this, so you don't sound like this. And the editing a 16th second out of my voice on Pro Tools also helps occasionally. But there literally will be like a they call it a vocal vocal fry. And I listened to myself spots I recorded 10, 15 years ago, and I can tell the difference.
100 yards, 4.5 seconds. The results are in. Presenting the 40-mile-per-gallon Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. Could have had a V8.
Fortunately, I study enough and I work out enough vocally, not for hours and hours a day. I'm not like a classical pianist. Way too lazy for that. But, a minute or so, a few minutes before I go in the booth, I'm go, 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 literally warming up the voice so it's relaxed and I don't injure it and I don't make my vocal cords red and I don't eat huge chunks of cheddar cheese and high caffeine coffee before I go in the booth, since it dries out the vocal cords.
You bring up a very good point about instruction and teaching, and at the Voice Shop in New York, we offer, if you go to voiceshopcoaching.com, you can learn how to do dialects, you can learn entry level, you can have expert classes. But for those of you who are watching this and you think you might like to discover if you have the it factor, just go to voiceshopcoaching.com and they will reach you and teach you. And here we have Bill Ratner, 74 years old. Did I get it right, Bill?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Thanks so much for broadcasting that, Keith. Actually, Keith's
no
wrong.
problem. Never mind giving up that personal information.
I'm turning 49 this week. I look this way because I've lived a very hard life.
Well, I mean, it's just most people, when they get into your particular demographic, aren't trying to study anything. And it's just, it's so wonderful to talk to you and to hear your voice and to hear your imitations and for you to take it all back to training,
Well, the truth
unusual.
is, if I had not done literally 6 years of voiceover classes, and I went from teacher to teacher to teacher to teacher, and had a lot of different teachers, and mainly groups, like I said earlier, because they're cheaper. But it was also helpful to listen to the mistakes that other voiceover artists would make, and if occasionally there'll be somebody who was really, really talented and knew more than I did, certainly. Listening to them was helpful. And then the critique you get in a class. If I had not done 6 years of voiceover training, I would be working at a PR agency, as a junior partner, being asked to retire, and looking back at, gee, those days in radio in the 70s and 80s were fun. I wish I'd pursued voiceovers, or I wish I'd been hired. And had I not studied, had I not gone to class and met producers who were really directing and met voice actors who were teaching, who really knew how to do it, and just worked and worked and worked. The thing that's difficult for a voice actor, as different from the on-camera actor or the stage actor is, the on-camera or stage actor, I really believe, gets more time in front of the camera in an acting class, more time on stage or with a scene partner, whether you're memorizing lines or rehearsing a scene. The voice actor has to be on mic in order to be working, or has to pretend there's a microphone there when you're listening to a voiceover demo or listening to a commercial on cable TV going, that's right, I do sound like John Hamm in a Mercedes commercial. And that to me is what is the best exercise you can give yourself as a voice actor. Imitate the commercials on TV, or imitate the commercials on voiceoverresourceguide.com or Cunningham.com or any of the talent agencies. Google voiceover talent agencies, listen to the reels, and then take a voiceover class. Lots of people are taking voiceover classes these days because they're not heavy duty ego busters like acting classes can be. You're studying an art that is grayer, more shadowy, ancient, the voice, the storyteller.
So let me ask this as we wrap up. What is left for you to prove? Is there anything left that is an ambition of yours that you'd like to get into that you haven't achieved?
Naive belief that I have almost always had since I started doing voiceovers over 40 years ago. And that's that the best, most interesting, creative gig is yet to come. Because I auditioned for a ton of computer games. I was Donel Lodina in Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, and then they killed him off because he was such a bad guy. I auditioned for tons of that stuff. One day they're going to go, we want Bill. And it's going to be a huge game, and it's going to make them billions of dollars. And I'm going to go to Comic-Cons and shake people's hands. And they're going to call me back in the studio and go, we think instead of Seinfeld, we want it to be The Bill Show on NBC.
Do you understand what you're saying? You're telling me at this particular time in your life, you're still hungry to achieve the next great feat. That's pretty impressive, Bill.
Yeah,
it's a
naive belief. And, I write on the side. I got a book published called Parenting for the Digital Age about doing voiceovers and about advertising to children and, how parents should view it. And I've gotten 2 books of poetry published by small presses last year. This weekend, I'm performing in a poetry show with a bunch of jazz players. And I'm absolutely thrilled because of the pandemic. There haven't been a lot of live shows, but I'm one of 6 poets reading. And my goal is to be, for the New Yorker magazine to call me up and go, Mr. Ratner, we've been on your website listening to your poetry, and Carnegie Hall has a free date in March 2023. We hope you're still alive for it because we'd like to feature you. Right.
Hopefully you are still alive for it. I have a premonition that maybe it just might actually come true for you. One thing for sure is that you can't get out of your voice what you can get out of a 25-year-old. Nor vice versa. It is mature. You've been working on it all of your life. Well, for at least 44 years, if my math is correct in my head. That is a long time to be a voice artist. And you've done so well. You've been so kind to me and Ryan and Mike and all the guys that are involved in the production of this show. We would just like so very much to thank you for coming on today, telling your stories and expressing things.
I want to tell you that I love you and I hate you. I love what you do. You're a wonderful writer. I've seen your work in the Village Voice, which has been one of my favorite weekly newspapers since the 70s.
Thank you very much.
And your enthusiasm and your interest in this weird art. I hate you because because you and your ilk are promoting the brilliant dark art of voiceovers, which makes so many people interested in voiceovers that it makes my work more competitive, Keith. So stop it, please.
You are a gentleman beyond belief. I thank you so much for those kind words, Bill. All the guys here in the studio, all of us that put this together, we were looking forward to this. And from Knoxville, Tennessee, we salute you and thank you for joining us. And we will be talking soon enough.
Great,
thank you so much, Bill Ratner.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, take care.